Hello, hello. So you've come back for more, huh? People who make it to part 2 are the ones who will probably actually end up doing this. People who only watch part 1? We will not speak of them. Congratulations. In quick review, in case you somehow missed a turn and ended up on the wrong video, part 1 went through the exterior trim removal. Remove the corner and end cap pieces, then remove the plastic. Then remove the screws of the exterior trim before you pry it off, after which you can clean it and add on the appropriate tape as a first line of defense against leaks. If you are a hillbilly, this will conclude this tutorial. But if your standards are somewhat closer to normal, keep listening. After having cleaned the exterior trim pieces by scraping the old caulk sealant off and then wiping them for an eternity with a chemical like lacquer thinner or acetone, you can now apply the new caulk. I originally bought an RV siding sealant called Proflex. Although the quality of the product seemed good, the tube of it itself was messed up. It created a lot of frustration. I ended up cutting the tube in half to use the rest of the caulking sealant. I also acquired another sealant called Proflex RV, which is made specifically for RV walls. We'll work on each piece of trim at a time, applying a healthy amount of caulk on the back of them. I ran 2 good beads of caulk, 1 bead on each side of the screw holes. After this, you can firmly apply the exterior piece to the RV from whence it came. It may be wise to make a light pencil mark where the bottom of the trim used to be. That way, you can get the holes to line up where they were before. As you screw it down, you should see some caulk trying to get squashed out. That's how you know you got a good seal. Take note, it's probably a good idea to have a second person available to help you hold these trim pieces in place until you can screw them in. I learned the hard way that just putting caulk on it and sticking it on there before you screw it down isn't necessarily good enough to keep it there.
No! No! No!
Trust me, you would be just as on edge as I am here by the time you're on your second day.
No! 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 No!
So after making sure the trim is clean, I reinstall it and actually successfully get some screws in there. You'll recall that I had one messed up screw on the top trim. Naturally, I can't screw into there. And so I'm just going to make sure that there is a healthy supply of caulk in that spot to make sure it seals well. Now I know it looks like it's just as simple as dropping in the caulk on the back of the trim and screwing it on and you can figure out the rest. But there's just one more thing that has to happen as regards the roof. So keep watching so you don't miss it and cause a possible leak. Take note that the sealant I used on the roof piece was recommended by the RV dealer. The primary difference is that it is a self-leveling caulk. Against my inclinations, I went with it. Now self-leveling caulks are good for when you're on a horizontal surface, but applying it under the top trim creates an issue with the vertical part. You know, the back wall. Although I think this caulk sealed it well, it was leaking like crazy down the wall. Of course, I kept up with it and cleaned it. That should prevent the caulk from dripping down. Now the 3 main trim pieces are back on, and it's about this time that I also replaced a downspout, but I'm going to put that in a separate video which I'll provide the link to. Please remember to like this video as well as check out our other RV tutorials. So after the trim pieces are screwed on, we can start to run our final sealant line down the trim. It's important that you don't squeeze too much out as you make this line. Squeeze to trigger slowly as you move it down the side of the trim. Afterwards, while also using a rag soaked with acetone or lacquer thinner, wet your finger on it and run it down the trim where the caulk is. If the caulk starts to back up on your finger, where it's going to fall off on the side as you're moving your finger down, well, then back off. Dispose of the caulk on your finger, and then wet it again with the chemical, and continue wiping the trim where you left off. Doing this will give you a sealed gap that you can be confident of. Naturally, you're going to do this on each side of every trim piece you are reinstalling. The only side you won't be doing this on is the roof trim, where it actually touches the roof. We have a different solution for that. At your local store, you can buy some roofing elastomeric coating like this Ultra Roof 1000 here. When you open up the container of the roof coating you're going to be using, make sure to stir it up well with a paint stick or even shower head if available. You can apply this all the way onto the metal trim itself that you just installed, but for the sake of looking decent, don't let it just drip down the sides. Also, make sure to really clean off the part of the roof that you're going to apply this to and make sure that the roof is dry. I cannot state that enough. The part of the trailer you are working on needs to be very dry for these materials to work their magic. Using a roller or a brush, you can start to apply the coating to the roof. Make sure to put a healthy covering of this coating on it. A good plan of action is to run your brush or roller one way, and then when you do a second coat at a later point, you run the brush or roller in the perpendicular direction. I'm not saying this because I've seen it fail otherwise, I'm just saying it because I read that in the directions. You'll probably have to wait until the next day for the second coat. Getting your roof coating on clean as well as making sure your caulk lines look clean will take some time. Once the two sides and the top are done though, you'll start coming to the home stretch. It's time to install the vinyl strip to replace what was there before. As you put this vinyl strip in, you're actually going to make it go a few inches above and below your metal trim pieces. Later, these will be covered by those small plastic trim pieces we removed. Roll it along and press it into the grooves. Oh, and keep your eyes above the equator, weirdos. That's better. You can also hold down the end pieces of the vinyl strip with a screw. This will help it to not ever slip out, and in the end of it all, we're going to put so much of our sealant in there that it won't really matter too much. Speaking of adding our sealant, or caulk, once the vinyl strips are in the metal trims, now we can put a healthy dose of our sealant in the backs of our plastic trim pieces. Pop them in place and screw them in. Hopefully we'll see a good amount of caulk squishing out to indicate that we got enough in there. Just like the metal trim, we'll clean up the sides of it with a nice caulk line. You're going to do this for all 4 plastic trim pieces, 2 on the bottom and the 2 corner ones on the top. When it's all said and done, not only will you have a clean looking back of your RV, but now you'll know that leaks you dealt with before will be a thing of the past. Well, I mean, at least for a couple weeks. These things aren't perfect, you know. Please feel free to check out our other related RV videos. One part of this project that I gave its own separate video to is how to install a new downspout on the end of your RV. If you've seen this video already, then the concept should be pretty easy to execute for you. Click it and find out the steps you should take.
Hey YouTuber! Did you enjoy this video? Well, don't forget to give it a thumbs up down below.
Check!
And if you're feeling especially giving, make sure to share it with a friend. Leave a comment below and subscribe.
Check, check, check!
And lastly, make sure to mail a check for $1,000 to 106 A Broadway, Huntsville, Louisiana 46582.
Huh? Shh!